Honey, I'm going live. You got to close your door. Hi, y'all. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon in the Brown Mamas community. Thank you for being a member of our community. We really appreciate you, and we're really excited to have a conversation. Y'all know, well, you probably don't know because we've only been doing it for the last 3 months, but I think it's the third Tuesday of every month, or is it the final Tuesday? It's the fourth Tuesday of every month. We do PBM office hours. Sometimes it'll just be me coming in to share some information. Sometimes I'll invite some moms to speak with me. And today, because our theme for the month has been travel, I wanted to talk about taking a trip to the motherland, to Africa, to the continent, to our homeland. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a very long time, and I've been watching the women of Facebook. I'm just going to call y'all the sisters of Facebook. Take their various trips at different times, and I was like, it'll be really cool because at first I was like, maybe we should get a travel agent, but I was like, I really just want to hear it from like the perspective of the people who've gone and just enjoyed themselves and had an experience that they can share with other people. So okay. Yep. Kira says she's gonna try to her best to get in a few minutes. All right. So we are down one person. We were supposed to have Kira Washington, but we are up two people. So that's bomb. So with us we have Shay Lowry. Y'all know Shay. She is one of our Facebook admins, very involved in the education space as well. Hey Shay, thank you for joining us for this call.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And then we also have Montia, who is the CEO and I'll say CEO and chief event planner over at the M. Robinson Group, and who is also a member of our community. Hey, Montia.
Hello, hey everybody.
All right, so let's just start off. Since Shay is right next to me, we'll go Shay and then we'll go Montia. Let's just start off by telling the audience like where in on the continent you went, when you went, and let's just give a little bit of like. I think our first question was like, just tell us about your experience. Why did you even decide to go to that place? All right, so I'm gonna be quiet.
So I went to Benin, Africa. It's considered West Africa. I went in early August of this year. And what made me decide to go was I have a relative who made a connection with someone about 30 years ago, and they just maintained their relationship. They actually met 30 years ago in Paris, and she actually hadn't even visited him in Africa yet. So she made the decision to go this year, but her niece actually had decided like 2 years ago. She was like, well, you have this connection and I want to go. So she's been there 2 times already. um, so she was saying that she was going to go again this year. So I was like, well, when you go, please let me know because I really want to visit. And I don't want to do like a touristy visit. I kind of want to have like a natural, like a real visit, a local visit. So she said she was going this year, and I was like, well, that sounds good. So we went this August. So we went to Benin, and that's what made me decide to go. And we stayed for 2 weeks. And it was a really, really great visit. So I went to Benin, and Benin kind of sits close to the neighboring countries of Benin are Ghana and what is the other country? I am forgetting. Nigeria, I think. I think Nigeria is another neighboring country. So that is where I went, Benin, Benin. And I feel like not a lot of people know about Benin. Um, so before I went, I wasn't very familiar with Benin.
Benin is from the studies I've done. It is the voodoo capital, right?
Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and it
It is
also
one of
where
the
JP goes from.
no, it is one of the places that where they still practice voodoo. Voodoo actually is one of the origin, like the original practices of like the religion where they used to really heavily practice in Africa before the country was invaded, and Christianity was brought over there. But they still heavily practice it there. So
And there are also a lot of correlations. So I've never been to the continent, but I'm a history buff. there are a lot of correlations between early Christianity and voodoo. It's actually pronounced voodoo. So if you do your research and you study, you'll recognize and realize that a lot of your saints are actually coming from the voodoo tradition of the Orishas. So do your work. Don't be scared of stuff that you don't know about, because you be practicing some stuff and you be like, oh, why am I practicing this? Well, your ancestors led you down my path, just FYI. So thank you so much, Shay, for that. Montia, I would love to hear from you next.
Hello. Okay, so I went to visit Dakar, Senegal, and that was back in January. One of the main reason that I went, it was something that I'd always, obviously most people, particularly Black people, want to eventually go home. For me, it was after the death of my mother. There was just this pull. My mother had gone to the continent before, as a journalist and as a photographer. And my sister and I just kind of had spent the year after our mother's passing visiting the places that she had gone. We wanted to remember those pieces of her as well, and kind of see what she saw, that kind of thing. So that's how I ended up going. And I went with a company, Going Global with Barbara, and it was phenomenal. It was not something I would have ever taken on alone. And they held our hand every step of the way. And it was just beautiful.
That's great to hear. And Montia, that's really interesting that, after your mother's passing, that was like a way for you to like kind of call her back to you,
It
was,
was.
to
Yeah, it
visit.
definitely was. I was 100% running away from home. I was 100%. I took a year to just run away from home. And Africa was kind of the final stop. And for me to get what I needed to, okay, go home and get your head back in the game.
So, because you talked about that, Montia, I'm going to skip forward to one of our questions. And because I think that inside of every Black man and woman is just this longing for understanding of self by understanding our roots, our history, the cultural, the historical origins of our culture. And so I just want to talk about that for a minute, because I think that's the first thing that we need to recognize, as we have this conversation, is like, well, so the question will be twofold. First of all, what were the emotions that you felt leading up to your trip? And then second of all, what were the emotions that you felt when you arrived?
Okay. You want to go, Shay? Okay, so for me, I leading up to the trip, there was some anxiety because I didn't know really what to expect, what to anticipate. You only know, what you've heard growing up, that kind of thing. And then, it's like, oh, you got to run down the health department and get these shots and take this medication. So I'm like, what am I walking into that I have to, have all of these prophylactic precautions, that kind of thing. There was also excitement. I was just really excited to be there. And I also felt like, because I've traveled to other countries and I hadn't gone to Africa, it sounds crazy, but there was always this guilt, this little piece of guilt. Like, this is like, you've been to Paris, you've been to France 3 times, but you haven't been home, and I just felt like you need to go to Africa and go home before you know what I mean? While you're traveling to all these other countries, you need to go back to your space. But it's just this weird thing. So I was really happy to go, and I felt like it was just my due diligence. Like, you got to go check on your own people before you start roaming all over the world. So for me, that was good.
Shay.
So for me, leading up, I have to say the same thing with the whole shots and you have to get this and that. I was like, I wanted to really go in with an open mind, and I didn't want to have like all the thoughts like, well, these are the images that they have of, like, everybody's poor and this is what the kids look like. And I'm just like, you know what, you have to go in with an open mind. This is not what it's going to look like. And don't go in with this fear of, just the fear factor, the shock and all that other good stuff. So I went in with an open mind, and when I got there, I was like, okay, I see
You were cutting out for a minute, but I think you're good now.
okay, I'm back. Okay. All right. So no, when I got there, I was like, look at this developed country, I just saw a sea of black people, I was but definitely pretty excited once I got there.
Hey, Kira. Thank you
Am
for
I still
joining us.
freezing?
Hey, Shay. I'm
Am I
sorry.
still
Shay.
freezing?
Yeah, you were frozen a bit, Shay. But we heard most of what you said, but you were frozen a bit. So, but thank you for sharing that, Shay. And I think
Okay.
everybody, both what both of you ladies shared about like just not knowing what to expect, like having some apprehension. Monty, I think that was really unique. You talked about having a little bit of guilt, like I've been all these other places, but not necessarily been here. Um,
Yeah. It's kind of like when you're young, if you go away to college
Mhm.
and you go visit everybody and your grandparents or your parents are like, you haven't been home yet, but you went over sunset, you traveled and saw
Mhm.
all of these people, but like you needed to come
Yep.
home and check them first. It was that kind of feeling.
yeah. Kira, do you want to introduce yourself? This is Kira Washington. She is the president and founder and chief waste beater over at Yoyoya Waste Beads and Workshops. And she is here to talk to us. Kira brings a really unique perspective because she spent time on the continent as a young lady, as a young woman. And so I really felt like that perspective was really unique. Kira, can you introduce yourself to the Brown Mamas community and tell us why you decided to visit the continent of Africa?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank y'all for having me. My name again is Kira Washington. I am the owner of Yoyoya. I am the waist speed practitioner at Yoyoya. And what I love to do is to have the opportunity to share culture and understanding of culture with those who I come in connection with and those who are willing to learn about it. I had the opportunity to live in Uganda for a year and a half. I went to Uganda around 11 years of age. The way that that happened was my father, and my paternal grandmother and her children were from Uganda. And she came to America when my dad was approximately like 12 or 13 years of age, but my uncles stayed behind. And so my uncle would come here to teach at the University of Pitt, and he taught Africana studies. And he would go back, he would just come here to teach, and then he would leave to go back. And so one time I was just playing, I asked him to go back, and he was like, why not? And so he had asked my mom, can I go? And she was like, sure, because around that time, gang violence, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Homewood area of Pittsburgh. So the gang violence was at an all time high. It was just one of those things that where my mom was like, it's the summertime. It's not good around here. It's getting bad. Go ahead. You could go. I went. The first experience I had was getting off the plane. Well, first of all, the plane ride was extensively long. It was a two plane ride trip. It took over 23 hours to get there, and then we had to get off of a huge plane and then get on a smaller plane. And it was weird for me getting off of a plane in the middle of a tarmac and not getting off and going directly into a building. It like really bothered me a little bit because I'm like, are we supposed to be walking on here where planes is flying and all of this other stuff? But I was young, I was 11, so I really didn't know. any better. And then to get on a smaller plane, I really, my ears was popping. I was really sick. The back, it just sounded like we were sitting right on top of the motor. It was like a really different experience for me. And once getting there, I realized the air was different. My breathing patterns changed. Again, I was younger, so I didn't understand that the air was a little bit more dense than what I was used to over here in the United States. Um, and then my family lived in an area where it was still a little bit countrified, if you will. And so we lived in almost like 30 minutes away from the city. And when I got there, we had to catch a small charter to the city, which again, it was so long. Like it was so long of a drive, but everything was amazing. Could you imagine as an 11-year-old just seeing everything as wow? You know what I mean? Like their trees look different, the ground looks different. I've never really seen any of that up close, like the way that the sun was shining. I was used to the sun shining here, but I never felt heat that strong until I got over there in the continent. And it was amazing. Um, we kind of lived in an area where we had, if you can imagine, townhouses almost like in a sea. It was kind of like that. And it was a very close knit community. And so again, everybody knew everybody. And then when you crossed the waters, it was a tradition that you could bring spirits over the water. So I went through that experience, and I also had my coming of age ceremony over there. Also, a lot of different things were different for me. I was so used to having a free education that I didn't really understand the values of them not having free education. Like, in order to stay up on the school, like we used to go to the window. I remember a group of us running to the school and just looking in the window and trying to see everything that we could see, because the school filled up quick. And if your family couldn't afford for you to go, or if you couldn't get a seat, you just couldn't go to school. And I didn't realize that the opportunity of all of the public schools here, that they did not have there. So it was really an amazing experience. The drinking water was different, just even down to getting up in the morning and having tasks to do in the morning. I wasn't used to that, but I was um in an area of older women. So you did as you were told. So when that meant get up in the morning and start your morning by helping cook, that's what you did.
Mhm.
And so, like I said, everything over there was amazing, all the way down to just the people I interacted with. In Uganda, there's not a lot of Caucasian people. There are a lot that visit, but there is not a lot that live in that central area. So a lot of people that we would see that, were Caucasian people, they were typically there to visit, or they were there as owners of businesses in the major city. You really didn't see too much of them walking the street. Um, when when I was leaving, we did notice that a couple of
Hold on, Kira. Kira,
absolutely.
I'm
Mhm.
gonna cut you off for a minute so we can, because I'm gonna come like you're giving all the details.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And we need to like, and we need everybody to give a little bit of detail. So, but thank you.
Okay.
That was like really, that was a great perspective, especially thinking about it from the perspective as a child, as somebody who wants to travel with their children. I'm like, oh wow, that's definitely seems like a worthwhile experience for children. Actually, somebody just asked that question, but we're gonna come back to that. So I want to ask a question just in terms of, let's get technical real quick. So, because I know a lot of the moms are thinking if they want to take a trip to the continent, I know my first thought was this is going to be expensive as heck.
Mhm.
Will I even be able to afford to take this trip? I don't want to go alone. So, will I be able to afford to take either with my husband or my children? So, can we just talk a little bit about that from a technical experience in terms of like planning your trip? What was that like? Did you have to save up a lot of money? Like, how did you plan such an extensive trip? Because, like you said, Shay, you said you stayed for 2 weeks. Kira was there for a year. Montia, I don't know how long you were there, but this is not a trip like you go for a weekend. You've got to be prepared to stay for quite some time. Montia, we can start with you because you're not
Okay.
muted. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I think we stayed about 10 days, but that included travel time, and so 2 of those days are basically getting there and coming home. The cost for the trip was, for me, I knew that, I had allotted how much I wanted to spend, and I was determined to not go over that. So for me, the number I had in my head was $5,000, and that would need to include room, board, airfare, meals, everything. And I'm kind of a stickler about, this is my budget, this is how much I want to spend. And the organization that we went with, we didn't have an issue with that at all. I was able to actually stay under that budget. I will say, had I had more people go with me, it would have cost even less. The more people that you can get to go, obviously, that's going to, if you're traveling with an agency, that's going to get your costs down. But so there were two of us. So we stayed under $5,000, and I would say that was with all of the excursions and everything included.
Okay, so I will be very, very transparent. This is probably going to be, this may be unrealistic for someone else. And this is very cheap. Like I said, we stayed for 2 weeks, but we went with someone. They were extremely hospitable. They are a fairly well off family. My flight was $1,200 by myself. It was all adults that went. We did not have to pay anything to stay with the family. They were very accommodating, but we did pass them $300 to stay with them each. So that was $1,500 for travel and accommodations. I took $500 for just to, like, spending money. So really like $2,000 for my trip, which was like extremely inexpensive. But that might be really, really unrealistic for another person. So it really, and we weren't in a touristy area at all. We stayed with someone local. So I don't know what the expectation would be for someone else. They cooked for us every day, so we did not have to go out and eat. The family that we stayed with, she cooked all of our meals for us, and when we did go out to eat, our host, he paid for our meals. So I don't know how much it would cost, but I will say, when we did go out shopping, and some of the pricing that I did see was fairly inexpensive um, to eat and shop.
Thank you, Shay. Kira, do you have a perspective on that?
I kind of like Shay. My experience was a little different because I went with family and we stayed in a family home. So there was no expense there. I do remember that my mom had to help pay for my flight, and my flight was around 1,200. I don't remember the cost of like food or anything because again I stayed with family, but I do remember going into the city for shopping and everything was fairly priced as far as I can remember. I don't remember anything being like, wow, we can't afford that, or wow, that's too much. I think everything was just about reasonably priced. And sometimes in the city they have like these huge street markets where you're able to like bargain and talk prices and stuff like that. And so most of the time, I'm a real big fruit person. So even being young, I loved fruit. So most of the time I would walk away with a bag of fruit for something less than like $5, $10, like a huge bag. I'm not talking about a small bag. So I think everything was like reasonably priced and fairly well.
When you guys got over there, did you feel like just in terms of comfort level, did y'all feel very comfortable once you were there? Because I feel like, the world kind of paints this picture of travel outside of the United States as being dangerous, and especially dangerous if you're going somewhere where there are people of color. So how did you all feel just in terms of your comfort level once you got there? And Chrysala just put in the Chrysala. Y'all know I'm not great with these names, but I'm gonna try. Just tell me the right way. She said check the money exchange rates, which is really good advice no matter where you're traveling outside of the country, because
Yeah,
some places it's actually more expensive.
It's expensive to exchange money at the airport. The family that we were with, he knows a banker, so the banker actually, I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but the banker came to the house and exchanged money for us so that we could shop. So he made it kind of cheap for us. But I agree with Kira that it was fairly inexpensive to shop, and y'all, these little tiny braids that I got in, it cost probably $300 to get it done here in Pittsburgh. I paid $13. $13.
Let me go. I need a retwist.
$13. And the stylist, she did have a hair salon, but she came to the house to do my hair. But when I was walking around asking like people to do my hair, she did tell me like somebody had told me $27. But when the stylist came to my house, she did say 13, and she was just saying because they knew I wasn't from there, that's why they had told me $27. But I did pay. She actually had charged me $9, but I had included a tip and everything in it. I paid her $13 to do my hair, and they did tell me not to give her too much, and like they were explaining why you don't want to pay too much, but yeah, it's fairly inexpensive to shop.
Wow. Yeah, I would love to hear about you all's comfort level, like once you got there. Thank you for that advice, Shay. Definitely very helpful in terms of understanding
But
monetary.
yeah, the comfort level, I felt fairly comfortable. Everyone was really really welcoming and very accommodating. Um, it was just it was very comforting to see like a sea of black people. Like, nothing against my light skinned brothers and sisters, but everybody was so like dark, and um it was just like a beautiful sight to see, just to see of black people. um I don't know, I don't know, I felt really 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 good. I didn't feel uncomfortable at all. I think there was just the only time something odd happened was when we went to the border. We went to the Ghana border just to kind of see how things went at the border. Um, there a guy did walk up to the car when we got out, and he asked to like buy one of us, and it was
You
yeah,
said, are you for sale?
he can tell we were tourists.
Yes.
But the guy, the family we stayed with, he did ask like if he was trying to buy one of us. And he, like waved him off. But other than that, like I felt extremely comfortable there, and I felt welcomed. Um, Nobody treated us differently. So yeah.
So for me, I was made to feel extremely comfortable from the time we walked out of that airport. Everyone was so welcoming, so nurturing. The family that guided us around our trip, and it was kind of like a family that was like the protectors of us, like our guides. They told us, okay, no, you don't want to go down there though. That's too much. Do that. They made us feel like it was their obligation to just make us feel comfortable at every step. They wanted to feed us all the time, and they were just very protective over us. And the people, particularly the women of Gory Island, were like immediately my sisters. Immediately from day one, we laughed and joked with them, and found out that we had way more things in common than we did, differently, that kind of thing. I can't really say out of anywhere that I've traveled internationally that I've been made to feel that comfortable.
Mm.
Yeah, for me it was it was amazing from get up. Even before we went, the family that was messaging us on WhatsApp, like, hey, don't forget, get this, do that, do this, they just held our hand through the entire experience.
Cool. Kira?
During my travels, it was very safe. Of course, I was with family, so I had a lot of protection, of course. We were as kids do, you kind of want to follow the teenagers at night. And that was the only thing we were told to, be careful at night. Just being young kids and trying to walk to the city at night was just it wasn't safe because we didn't have protection, but anywhere, like even in the States, it's just not safe to have kids walking around at night. So I don't
Mm.
think I felt unsafe even with that warning because even when we did go to the city, and I think it was late. Um, we were safe. Most of the elder women would look out for us, or they would say, "Hey, you know what I mean? Don't go right there, or stay out of unlit areas." But now, as an adult, I realized that was kind of, common sense direction that as kids we didn't really take heed. But I always felt safe. Even in the marketplace, there was a lot of times to where you're being called in 40 different directions because everybody wants to sell you something. But I was never made to feel like, it was pressuring or somebody was going to whisk off and take me away. No, I never felt like that. Although my aunt used to always stay with her, kind of presence over me because as an 11-year-old, it's easy to get lost, or it's easy to stray off. And so my advice would be for kids. To definitely keep your eye on them in market areas or high traffic places, because even though you still have your people that live in that area, you still have your tourists, and I'm not sure how it is now, but even at 11, there was still uh, sex trafficking or trafficking of young adults or trafficking of women. So just keeping an eye on young children is always important, no matter where you go, because you can never be too safe, But I never felt uncomfortable or like anybody was being rude or the manners wasn't there. I was like Miss Montilla said, I felt everybody make you feel overly welcome. You know what I mean? Welcome home. We miss you. Hey, sister. Hey, brother. You were always made to feel loved, per to say.
What about language, y'all? Because of course you're going outside of the country. There's multiple languages being spoken. Like, how did y'all overcome language barriers?
My family spoke Lingala, and my father spoke Lingala in the home. So I knew of Lingala. When we touched down, I do believe we touched down in West Africa before we took our second flight to Uganda. I was not familiar with that language, but there are a lot of dual language speakers. So there were a lot of people who spoke English or
Mhm.
who was able to say, okay, well, they said this and they said that. Or we were trying to catch this was way before Uber. So we were trying to catch like a cab. And he was like, oh, he wants such and such, or this is how much you have to pay him for him to take you here. So it was a little rough at first, but there were a lot of people that were willing to help.
Yeah. A lot of the folks there that I ran into either spoke English or they spoke French, and the Going Global folks were fluent in French. So that wasn't a problem. They made sure, that we were understood and that we understood what people were saying to us. So we didn't have any language barriers. What I will say was particularly interesting about language is that outside of that, and I cannot call the name of it right now, but they also had their own geographical kind of, we would call it slang, you know what I mean? Or AAVE for us, So they had their own language too that they spoke together, and they, shared some things with us, like this is what this means. So it's like we were saying things, they're like, yeah, that's not really what that means. You have to know the nuance of it, you know what I mean? And you have to, it's
Mm.
more of a vibe than you know what I mean? It's like when we say, hey, what's up? We don't mean like what's up, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. So that was very interesting to to hear and get a little bit of understanding about.
That sounds really that sounds really interesting. I
Yeah,
probably want to study that.
yeah, I like that part about it a lot.
Um, Everybody spoke multiple languages where we stayed. Everyone spoke Benin language, but each area, like Montia said, they all had their own regional language, but everyone also spoke French. Um, Not a lot of people spoke English. I did learn from Natu. That was the family. That was the guy that we stayed with. He said that a lot of folks had preferred to learn French over English because not a lot. It's very difficult for them to um, come to America, but it's easier for them to get to other countries where they speak French. So that is the preferred language for them to learn over English. But him and his daughter and a few of their relatives speak English. So it was easier for us to communicate with them. So because they knew French and the regional language. But a lot of them knew more than like three. I know his sister knew 7 languages. The kids knew 5 languages.
Wow.
Because his sister had moved to Ghana. So it was they knew a lot of languages, but anyway, Benin language and French. So that was the primary language there.
Yeah. Also, Chrysali's giving out some great information in the comments. So if y'all are watching the video and want some more information, Chrysala, we should have invited you to this conversation. Maybe we'll do it again and we'll have some more moms who visited because this is obviously a hot topic in our group. So we'll definitely have this conversation again. Definitely want to talk about like in terms of when y'all got there being Americans, like what was the thing that surprised you the most? Like what was the thing that made you be like, oh my God, I cannot believe I've been either walking around with this thought in my head that was not true, or I've never seen anything like this. Like, what blew your mind during your experience?
Can I? Okay.
Yeah.
So the thing that blew my mind was their last names. We had went to the zoo and they had did this activity at the zoo where it was just like, say something about your last name. And I thought he was saying like make up a story or like a song about your last name, and they were doing it. And someone had said to me, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. She's making something up. And she was like, no, like that is the song of her family's last name. So went on to explain to me that every family knows the history of their last name. Every family has a story. Some families have a song that goes with their last name. If you know a family, you might say, oh yeah, that's so and so's family from wherever, or you might know, oh yeah, their family used to they make I don't know, like they're masons, or their grandfather makes I don't know. But anyway, everybody's family has a history and they know where they come from. And I was like, damn, we don't have that. Like I literally don't know who I am. Like I don't know where my family is from. They can literally trace their family history, and we do not have that. Like I had a moment where I had to sit down. Like I had to sit down for a second and like just really take that in, and just say, like, just wow, like wow. But that was like my big aha. Like, yeah.
But Shay, can I just say it's not too late? Like you can give you. I always think about because my dad always talks about this. Kira knows my dad. We know well our dad. He always talks about how like when we look at European cultures in the States and they have like a talisman or they'll have like a family crest or they got that from us. So at the end of the day, it's never too late. You can give your last name meaning today. You can decide today we're gonna have a family, I don't know, mascot, something. And we're gonna write our story down and we're gonna tell it to our kids. So it's never too late. But that is yeah, thank you for sharing that, Shay. That's so meaningful. Anybody else want to share? Like, what was something that blew your mind that surprised you?
Okay, so two things for me. One was, unfortunately, I had grown up hearing about all of this tension between Africans and African Americans, and those of us of the diaspora, right? So I had always heard, that there was this kind of tension between or this tension that people who, still live in Africa felt towards African Americans. And I cannot say this any more feverishly. That was so far away from anything that I experienced. I did not experience that at all. I'm not going to, that doesn't negate someone else's experience, but I'm saying me personally, that is not what happened. Everybody there, it was just love instantly. And I was pleasantly surprised, I think that may have been a bill of goods that we were sold to keep us separate and to make us not want to go back and not want to see more. Because that just wasn't my experience at all. So also something in line with that, just kind of congruent with that, is I was surprised by how much the African people had this compassion for me, almost like, like I was the one, obviously, like, oh, I feel so sorry for you that you didn't get to be raised here, or that you weren't, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. Like they had this level of compassion, like they were almost kind of pitied me, but not in this like condescending way, but really like, sister, I'm so sorry for what happened to you, and that you did not get to experience this life here with us. And I didn't expect that, you know what I mean? Yeah. So that was surprising to me, how they just were like almost comforting me, like, oh, sorry, you have to live over there, that kind of thing.
Kira, you want to share? Thank you, Montia.
Of course, I had some amazing experiences. One of the great experiences I had, and Crystal, I actually know Crystal through dance. One of the amazing experiences I had over there was I was able to learn both Congolese and Ugandan dance. And when I first started to be taught the dance, I kind of felt a little bit like how Miss Montia was saying about, is there a difference? Are they going to treat me different because I'm not from here, or are they going to, show me just a little bit, or show me the watered down version and not really give me everything? And I was far from wrong. I was far from that. It was really, they took their time. They loved on me. They gave me the history of everything. It wasn't just one of these things to where it's like, I remember one of the kids was like, "You're not purebred." And I remember her mom like plucking her and was like, "Don't say that. She's one of us." You know what I mean? Don't you ever say that. And not even at so young, it like filled my heart, because I'm like, I was never taught to see difference. When I was growing up, the colorism was a really big thing. So I was always like almost bullied for being dark skinned. So being over there and being actually welcome for this brown skin, I was loving it. I was eating it up. You know what I mean? And then I had an amazing experience. I had a coming of age, which I didn't even know I was ready for. I didn't even know that was, so I knew nothing about that. I knew about Sweet 16, and I was looking forward to my Sweet 16. And I'm like, I'm not of age. And when they explained to me like what a coming of age was and how everything was to happen, I was scared at first. I didn't know anything about it. But I realized that a lot of things I was taught in school was inaccurate. Um, I just didn't realize that until I actually went through a lot of different things. And one of the things that was said to me, like I use till this day, Black history didn't start with slavery. Like we were here, like we were people. We have traditions. We have things that we do, things that we believe in, ways that we eat, ways that we celebrate, that are just, they're not well represented in the States. You know what I mean? And once I've learned that, I was able to pass those things on to my kids without second guessing whether I was doing it correctly, or whether I was, sidestepping or making mistakes. Because even with naming my kids, I made sure that I stuck with tradition, of making sure that the elder of my family names my children. And that was a hard thing for me to do because as growing up, I always wanted to be like, I want to name my kids. It's so important for me to give my kids the names that I wanted them to have. But once I understood what tradition really looked like, I was able to open up and allow someone else to give my child a name. And I didn't realize that tradition until I was taught it. So those were very amazing experiences for me because they changed who I was as a person so that when I had children, I was able to speak to my children in a manner of experience and not based on assumption or what I was inaccurately taught.
I think, you know, Kira being one of my really good friends, I look to her a lot for just understanding how to navigate a family. And I think as women who have been a part, who have had this African diasporic experience, I think it is vital that you all look at yourselves as light bearers. Um, because not all women have had that experience. And one of the things that I've learned sitting up underneath Kira is just the importance of mothering and the value and importance of the Black woman as the culture bearer for her family. And I hope that you all recognize, having had this experience, how much light you have the ability to bring to your community, to your family members, bringing back those experiences, whether it was a 2-week experience or a 1 year experience. Shay, I'm still waiting on the pictures. I'm still, I'm still stalking your timeline for pictures, because this, I just feel like these experiences that you all have, I just hope you don't keep them to yourselves, because it's just so important for Black people to recognize and not be afraid of our history, of our culture. Because, like Shay said, like, we've lost so much already that I feel like we hang on with dear life to the little bit that we do know. So I know that, you know, y'all might be, some of y'all might be out of your comfort zone right now, but I would really love to see y'all do more to tell us more about these experiences, because we don't know. We don't know what we're not told. We don't know what's not shared with us. We don't know what we don't have an up close encounter and experience with. And that was one of the reasons why I felt like it was really important to have this conversation, because I know there's, you know, everybody is talking about Black luxury right now and traveling, and, you know, Black folks need to travel. But the reality is that not all of us are going to get this experience. So we will live vicariously through the people who have the experience. So we just need y'all to share more. It's 2 o'clock, so I don't want to keep y'all too much longer. But so we'll just end with, like, what is something that you feel like people need to know about making this trip to the motherland that maybe you didn't talk about already?
So I'll go. I just really want people to understand that this making this trip is going to be like nothing that you've ever done before. You know, when you go on vacation, yeah, you make memories, you have a good time. Going home is life changing. It's something that you are going to take with you for the rest of your life. Those experiences, there is a feeling that's indescribable. You know, I just can't really put words to it, but this is something that's more than travel. This is like a true life experience, a true journey. Like, this is really a really important chapter in your book. So it's more than a vacation. It's more than any trip you'll ever take. This is just something that you really, if you can experience it, something that you really need to experience and have your children witness. It's just that's all. That's my main point. I just want people to know, it says you don't really go on vacation to Africa. Like, you are literally going home, and that's just something that you'll take with you.
I agree with what Montia said. When you go with an open mind, um, go with an open heart. Absolutely take it all in. They absolutely want to welcome you. Um, you should accept Africans as well. Uh, whew, it's just every everyone should go. Um, your children should experience it. I can't wait to take my kids. Like she said, both of them said they were calling us sis, sister. uh, e- just go. Keep an open mind and keep an open heart. We should all go. They want us to come. They really do. They do. And what you think is wealth, is not the same wealth. So yeah, just go and keep an open mind and open heart.
I would definitely say to definitely go. It's an amazing experience, one that you'll never forget. If you have the opportunity, please take your children, because I think the experience that they will get there is one that they can't get anywhere else. Sometimes we fight because we want our kids to have these experiences at Disney and and all of these different places. It will not touch the hem of taking them to the continent. I guarantee they will have memories that they will never be able to forget because the embrace, the understanding, the concept. A lot of times I tell my kids, I say, y'all are spoiled, y'all are privileged, but y'all don't realize how privileged y'all are until y'all see other children that may not. Um, have it the same way, but are a little bit more happier because they're happier with less or happier with the same. You know what I mean? And my children need to really experience and see that. I mean, I had one of the happiest times of my life at 11. Really, it changed my whole mindset. Coming back here, my self worth, my understanding of who I was as a person, it just it made the difference. So I went into turning 16 with a totally different understanding that I would not have had if I would not have went. I mean, I think if I would have went for 2 weeks, I would have had an amazing time. But actually having that experience was so amazing. So I would encourage you to go, take your children, go as a family unit as you can, even if you can, because you will have an experience. Your husband or your significant other will have an experience, and your children will have an experience, and it's one that you'll be able to talk about and really love for as long as that memory will hold.
And I do want to share this before we end. And I know there's a lot of conversation around the village, like taking care of the kids. Where's our village? They still have that village. That village still exists. I've seen it. So when you go, you'll see it. They still have that, and we absolutely need to incorporate that again. Okay? Because they absolutely still have it. And I need my kids to go. So yes.
Shay said she's putting her kids on the flight today.
All right.
And
Yeah.
Because
don't let price stop you, because there are different options to go price wise. So don't be scared. Oh, I can't go
mm,
because it's too expensive. There are a lot of opportunities to like cut your cost in half,
mm,
or you can go with groups that are now going for $600 a person. Um,
mm,
so definitely explore those options. There's a group in Atlanta, but they leave from Atlanta, but they take people from everywhere, and their starting price is 500. I do believe it's for like a 2 week experience. So explore
mm.
your options.
Kira, we
There's
need their
opportunities to
information.
go.
So what we might do,
So
what I'll try to do is see if we can gather, because I know Montia has an organization that she went with. And we should have had Lakeisha on here too, because Lakeisha does trips for Ujima. And I know that they do it through an organization, I think it's called Armada or something like that, where they will do educational trips. So if you have a group of young people, they will help you take a group of young people, and they make it really cost effective for the young people. So maybe the next step in this conversation is to gather some folks that can kind of tell us, how to shake down that cost. Because I think that for me, that's the number one barrier that I keep thinking, like you said, like I would really rather take my kids on an international trip than take them on a cruise or take them anywhere else. But that cost, especially if you ain't got one kid, if you got 2, 3, 4, 5 kids, like
Yeah.
some of us do, you that's a lot of flights. That's a
And
lot of flights.
I will tell
It's
you the
also long.
organization, yeah, and the organization that I went with, they actually have a development person on their staff that walks parents who want to take their kids internationally through all of the fundraising. And there's links on the
Ah,
page so that people could fundraise, people could donate. Then they do their own fundraising and, split that part up amongst the kids to get the cost down even lower. So if it's okay, I can put that information in the chat just so that people could take a look for themselves. I don't know if I know how to put it in the comments. I'm gonna put it in our chat, Muffy. Maybe you could put it.
yeah, I can definitely. If you you can just post it in the comments. It'll go in there, right on the
Okay.
left side of us or the right side of us. Yeah. So
Yeah,
somebody just some mama just texted me and said, when is Brown Mama's taking a trip to Africa? So we're gonna try. First, let's start small because first we need to take a trip
right.
somewhere where we can just get our feet wet because we ain't been on no trips. But that is something that's actually on the agenda. I have an appointment this week to talk about it with the travel agent, because I definitely want us to do some traveling together. And what Shay said is so important. And Shay, you had something else to say, so I want to give you a chance to say it. But I think it's hard for us as Black folks in America to believe in this village because we haven't ever seen it. So, Shay, what was you about to say?
Oh no, I was just saying that they still have their village. Like, we just talked about it takes a village to raise a child. They still have that village. But even family, like there's a lot of homelessness here. They have a lot of poverty, but they don't have a lot of homelessness because they take care of one another. So you might not see a lot of homeless people. You might see a lot of poverty. They're not homeless because they have family taking care of each other. But I mean, that's it. It's just the village is there, and we
Yeah.
just have to do better with our villages here. But in terms of that with the children having that village, it's there.
Mhm.
So
Well, thank you,
that
ladies,
was
so much for joining me for this conversation. We will try our best to continue to have this conversation. This is, I mean, I try to take my cues from y'all, like what's most successful, and this seems like a conversation that y'all definitely want to continue to have. So we will continue to have it. Thank you to our light bearers, our sisters who have made the journey. We appreciate y'all for just sharing this information with us. Thank you to the sisters who've been in the comments, giving mad comments. Make sure y'all read the comments. There's some great information there as well. And everybody be safe. Be safe. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself. If you're planning on doing some travel in the next coming months, like I hope this is you know, I hope this is a catalyst for you not being afraid to just take the trip, because at the end of the day, your first trip may not be to the continent. Maybe your first trip is to Florida. Maybe your first trip is to Texas. Maybe your first trip is somewhere. Just get your feet wet. Because at the end of the day, what I've learned about travel is it just expands your horizon. And especially in a siloed city like Pittsburgh. When I tell you people don't move like they move in this city, when you go to other places, they don't move like that. So just know that if all you know is Pittsburgh people, you are extremely limited in your worldview. 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 So thank y'all, sisters. Have a great day. We will talk to y'all later.
Thank
Peace.
you. Bye bye. Peace.